Wait, how
example.
much stuff
But
in the
many,
world do you want to ban? Just out of curiosity. Video games, food,
no, no,
movies, I
I didn't.
assume?
Pornography has this kind of accelerated novelty because people can access lots of different kinds of pornography that has not been possible like historically because of the lack of technology,
Yeah, we
like the
got
lack of
wacky stuff these days. I agree it's a more extensive kind of erotic stimulation than anything your imagination could conjure up, like, or at least it has the potential to, you know, like it's a quick template to that. But I would say the same thing about like candy, you know? Like food used to taste like shit, you know? Well, not really, like you could cook meat and it would be fine, but you know, generally speaking, the medieval peasant subsisted on gruel, okay? It wasn't a great life. Nowadays, you can go down to the grocery store and for $4 you can pick up a chocolate cupcake that, if eaten by a Dickensian orphan, would immediately cause them to explode. And people get fat off that shit, right? Like, it tastes so good, people get hooked on it. That's a real problem. A lot of folks are fat over that. But you
I
can't
agree
ban the
with you.
cupcake. It's just you have to learn to live in a world where those resources are available and teach people to be moderate about it.
I completely agree with you that this is like the same kind of argument applies to certain kinds of food. But the thing about foods as well, because of processing and the ability to highly process foods, and you have entire food scientists whose entire job is to artificially manipulate food in order to make it as tasty and addictive as possible because it generates this dopamine rush in an artificial way. So I agree with you that,
What's an
and there
artificial
haven't,
dopamine rush? I mean, if it's
I
tasty,
mean,
it's tasty, right?
artificially induced because the natural food, like if you picked up, even like with, even white sugar that you're using in desserts like a cupcake, the processed version of the cupcake has been actually over engineered to artificially induce even more dopamine, which is why a lot of people are addicted to junk food, and certain governments have wanted to curb, this kind of processed food because it's making the population obese. This is actually a perfect analogy to
So,
pornography.
would you want to ban chocolate cupcakes?
Artificially
Well,
engineered.
all food you
Yes, I
get at the
would.
grocer right now is artificially engineered to some extent. Outside of like the tomatoes
Oh,
or whatever, some degree of processing goes into almost everything we eat for preservatives' sake, or because, well, I mean, hell, a lot of the
yeah.
fruits and vegetables we eat are GMO. Like, they literally got engineered at the DNA level to be tastier to us. So depending like where you draw the line, because that's the question, right? It's like, where do you draw the line? Because we've had wood carvings of people's fat ass titties since thousands and thousands of years ago. Depending on how far back you want to go, pornography's been around a long time. So when did it get too far, right? Was it when the video file came about, like 240p shit? You
But
know,
you can
there's
measure this. It has an empirical effect. Like you
folks have
can
gotten fatter
measure.
lately.
I know because for the same reasons, like so for the same reasons that people are being addicted to pornography, they're being addicted to other artificial stimuli. Video games are another example. Food is another
Wait, how
example.
much stuff
But
in the
many,
world do you want to ban? Just out of curiosity. Video games, food,
no, no, no.
movies, I
I didn't.
assume?
No, I think that these are all of different moral categories. But when it comes to video
Wait, why?
games, or not moral categories, but having different moral weight, I would say. But I mean, my argument doesn't depend on that. I just want to point out that with like app developers develop apps to make them as addictive as possible. I think this is very harmful to society because people can't put their phone apps, can't put down their phones because these apps are hooking them in the same way that casinos hook gamblers because of their slot machines, like specific ways that they designed the casino to play on these biological, psychological proclivities of the human mind.
So, oh, I agree with what you're saying. There are things that people do in food production or how they design gotcha games or what have you, where I think that it goes beyond a desire to produce a product and it goes towards an effort to prey on people's, addiction receptors. I think that's a real issue. But the problem is, where do you draw the line? When it comes to food production, I can think of maybe a couple of processes by which you could say, okay, maybe companies, you can't use this chemical, go the extra 1/100th of a cent more expensive per unit produced, and, we'll call it there. When it comes to how the gotcha games or casinos are done, you can think of like common sense legislation to try to curtail some of the more extremely addictive predatory elements here. So where's the line on pornography? Because so for me, as somebody with an entirely healthy relationship to pornography, you know. If I want to look at fat titties or whatever, I can just look at the fat titties, and then I can just, guys, some good fat titties. And then I can just, you know, leave, walk away from the computer. I don't know what would constitute like a pornography addiction, like line where you, none of this, but like the other stuff is fine. What about people who draw fat titties, right? I mean, depending on how abstract the drawing is, you've got, you know, a bunch of junior pornographers doodling in their 8th grade notebooks. You know, I know that I was at the time. I guess my question is like, where do you, like, what, you're in charge, you're the Ayatollah. You're what's the big guy? The biggest guy, like the Pope. What law? Is it just like you put a drawing up of 2 circles with smaller circles in them and they just come and shoot you? Like where would you draw the line?
Well, I think before let me answer that question. But first, so you say that it's reasonable for governments to actually restrict processed food, like with real extreme examples of manipulation of food or technology to curb, you know, these kinds of harm. So would you say the same for pornography?
I think that there are easy lines that you could draw, but I'd always be careful about this stuff because I'm always going to be like very cautious when it comes to the government's ability to restrict the production of materials, especially media. So like when it comes to the like movies, for example, or TV shows, movies and TV shows absolutely do use marketing and production techniques to hook people. And people do get kind of like lost in some of them fake realities, like those folks who killed themselves after Avatar came out, you know, stuff like that. But I would never want the government coming in and saying like, yeah, actually, you can't have like crazy alien worlds in your movies because it makes people like want to be in them too much. That shit's way too far for me. And porn is art and is media. So that line, because it's easy, it's chemical with food. Don't use this chemical. Bam, easy. You can test food for it. But what do you do with porn? Like, what's the like? You can't do cum shots. Does the porn has to cut out right before you nut, or
there is all like, because addictive behaviors or these kinds of behaviors that become problematic, there is a difference in the brain structure that is caused. So the wood carvings that they did 1,000 years ago, those wouldn't actually change the structure of the brain. But many studies are showing that the use of porn, even like I'm not talking about like outright addicted, even just very little use can change the structure of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, the reward center. Just like one hit of heroin or one hit of cocaine, it will change the structure of the brain.
so
They have discovered this same exact thing with pornography.
I've seen studies that parts of your brain light up when you're looking at pornography, but I've seen nothing indicating that looking at titties on a screen once will irrevocably change your brain. I mean, they're just titties on a screen, right? You see them on the screen, you see them in person. If it doesn't break your brain seeing them in person, you know, I don't think there's anything more innately harmful to seeing them through a screen than seeing them in person. The problem is like the habitual relationship you form with it, like the degree of dependency. But people have IRL sex dependency too. There are sex addicts, right? Like folks who get real depressed if they're not like creaming pussy like 3 times a day or something. It seems like humans just have a habit of getting real into things they like. We do the same thing with video games. That's also new, but we can't ban video games. We'd get all the people watching this angry. So, like, where does the line cut? Because I want to know, like, okay, you're the Grand Poobah, okay? I'm a talented artist. How realistic can I draw my circles before I get shot in the back of the head?
But you keep saying that there's no like difference between seeing something in real life. I acknowledge that, you know, sex addiction is also real. You can also be addicted, or you can be negatively affected by a certain stimulus that doesn't show up on a screen, but you see in real life. Like that distinction is not really relevant to the point that I'm making. The changes to the brain can happen in either case. It can happen through seeing something in real life. It can happen through eating something. It can happen through playing a video game. Like that's just something that is established. And the term that I used is a supernormal stimulus. And that's what causes a kind of change to the brain structure that leads to addiction in the same way that a drug addict or the use of even like one hit of the crack pipe is going to change the brain and causes someone to fall into crack addiction.
Well, wait, hold on. First of all, I'm for drug decriminalization, so that don't fit for me. But if we're talking about, if you're
But
saying
you think
that this
that crack
effect,
is harmful to society, right?
I think that banning crack has been more harmful to society than its existence has.
But we'll put the censorship or banning question to the side because
That's
the
the main
debate is
question, though. Even
no.
even if so,
The main
no, no, no,
question
it
is it harmful to society? That's
because
the
if
main
it's
question.
well, okay. Do you think porn should be banned?
Yes, because it's
Well,
harmful. But
well,
that
no,
is
no, no,
based.
no, no. Well, no, you can't. Well, you can't run away from it then. Because when people say so and so is harmful for society, I don't know, maybe skateboarding is harmful for society, but you got to give people the right to do things that are harmful because otherwise you don't live in a free society. I don't want to live under a
Well,
paternalistic nanny state. The real question is, does banning something that is potentially harmful to society produce better outcomes than allowing it to exist at all? The drug war in the United States is a pretty resounding answer to that question. We have not cut down on drug use, but we have increased human misery and spent a lot of money doing it too. So if you acknowledge that you're going to form these brain patterns seeing titties in real life as opposed to seeing them online as well, then it seems like the capacity for sex addiction, whether it's virtual through porn or in real life, is present either way. And we know men have done plenty of crazy shit to get laid, so the potential for harm, it seems, is merely being transplanted here, not invented.
and you don't just tell people that, oh well, here's all the heroin that you want, here's all the cocaine you want, just practice enough willpower and that's going to solve the problem. No, that is a very destructive type of approach.
That's literally what we do. Wait, that's the effective method. Yeah, that's the reason
no
why
even in countries where there's decriminalized drugs are decriminalized, that doesn't mean that they're legal. They're still illegal, but you just won't get put in prison for them.
So no, functionally, there are literally facilities, even in the United States, where if these people want to do heroin, the government will give them heroin. I think Sweden does this. This is good because it reduces the likelihood of them overdosing on low-quality heroin. People don't want to be addicts. People want to live healthy and fulfilling lives. And the worst
how do you live a happy and fulfilled life? Well, I mean, you can't do it if you're addicted to something. You can't do it if you can't form meaningful relationships because you have no drive to do so.
Yes,
your
you can.
Sex drive has been completely sapped because you're constantly masturbating. Just like a child who is constantly eating candy or donuts.
Okay, hold on.
Or
First of all,
processed food is going to die.
We're not
that's
children.
Why, that's the harm.
We're not children. Second of all,
drug addicts aren't children either. But we still want to
I agree. That's what I'm trying to get at.
No, the usage of those drugs.
Arresting people who are drug addicts has not lowered the rate of drug addiction. Instead, what you do is you give them a clean place to shoot up, you give them clean dope, and you give them access to medical care. This is, no matter how unintuitive it might seem, mathematically more effective at reducing drug overdoses and drug addiction. Portugal.
My point was simply that, look, I'm familiar with decriminalization.
This is my point.
My point was very simple, that the drugs are still acknowledged as being harmful to society, and you don't want to just spread them widespread so people can access them wherever they want or however they want. But with pornography, it's widely available, it's easily accessible, anonymously you can access it. So this has driven up the usage of it to astronomical levels, and people are not having sex as a result. Forget about marriage. The amount of virgins, the percentage of virgins under 34 has skyrocketed.
This is what I mean about correlative and causative. There are other things happening right now that are making it difficult for people to get laid. But again, the point here is like this. Wait, please.
I explained the causal relation. I explained the causal relation.
I promise, Daniel. Go ahead, Vaush, and then I promise we'll come right back to you in just a moment, Daniel.
This is a one-to-one thing. The best way to get people to live good lives is not to deny them the ability to make good choices. It's to incentivize the good choices. So you don't want to ban drugs because that doesn't really reduce drug usage that much, for one, and has increased it for a couple of reasons, in the States at least. And for two, because you're not actually giving people the tools that they need to get in a better position that they would have been otherwise. You're still letting them languish in the conditions that incentivize drug use. In Portugal, they decriminalize drugs. You don't get arrested for doing drugs over there, but they keep an open door for rehabilitation. The goal then is to allow these people's better instincts to take over. If you arrest them, all they're going to do is stay a drug addict in prison. They get let out in the street, and the first thing they think of is, how do I get more drugs? Banning pornography will not make men act good. Men act horrible everywhere, okay? It might make them, I don't know, go out and rape more women. The rise of internet pornography has correlated with a significant reduction in the rate of sexual assault, so that's another thing to take into account. But for the most part, I think it's far better, like, if you want like dudes to get their nut off,
You know what
don't want
else
to just ban
reduces-
porn. You just want to like say like give them the tools, build like walkable cities, give them like local areas to congregate in, build a strong social network, give them hot chicks to talk to. You know,
Kick it over to Daniel. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, you look at a society where you have reduced the amount of meth and cocaine and heroin on the streets versus a society where that is increased. You have more meth, heroin, and cocaine on the streets, which is a better, healthier society. It's obviously the one that where there's less of the drug that people can abuse.
wrong. It's where there
That
are
has
fewer,
nothing to do with this. Let me
it's
finish.
where there
That
are
has nothing.
fewer addicts.
Yeah, so people who don't have a source, they don't have access to the drug, they are going to withdraw from that drug because they have no choice.
That
Okay,
hasn't
this has
worked
nothing.
anywhere.
This has nothing.
No. I can't let you.
No,
This
you keep
doesn't
interrupting
work.
me, James. Come on, man.
Hold on.
Say quiet,
Let's
and then
give
you
Daniel a
interrupt.
chance to finish. We gave
I
you a
will. I
good amount of time,
apologize.
Vaush.
It don't
Let's
work
give
though.
maybe another 60 seconds for Daniel. Then we'll kick it over to you, Vaush.
There has to be some kind of connection because you can very easily see the causal chain between the lower sex drive because you're constantly ejaculating every single day.
People are going to jerk off with or
pornography.
without porn.
No, there's a difference. There's a supernormal stimulus when it comes to pornography. That makes a huge difference.
Okay, we're doing the narrativization thing again. One more time to make it clear. Drug prohibition fails. The alcohol prohibition in America in the 1920s.
We're talking about morality.
No, we're not. You keep jumping back and forth. Nobody gives a shit about your morality. We're talking about how do you improve. We're talking about how do you improve society. Whether or not you think something's harmful. And by the way, I don't think porn's harmful. I don't think cupcakes are harmful. It's possible to have harmful relationships with them. I think that about video games and everything else. Literally, most of the population looks at porn. Most of the population don't have a porn addiction. There are people with porn addictions. There are people with video game addictions. There are people with food addictions who have eating disorders. I don't think that inherently makes the thing harmful. However, what we're really talking about here is prohibition. And there is just no indication that prohibition has been an effective tactic of making people's choices for them. It's the paternalist's answer, the easy answer. Funnily enough, the child's answer, because it's so simple. You don't like something, so you ban it.
It works for child porn. It works for child porn. It works for many other things that people want to ban.
First of all, we still have a massive problem. Wait, first of all,
ban guns or not? Like,
we still have a
banning
massive.
Guns actually reduce gun violence? Yes or no? I mean,
so hold on. Wait. I waited for you. First of all, when we're talking about stuff like banning actual real world products and services, entirely different world. We're talking about media distribution and what people have access to. You were including stuff like just a lady putting her tits up on Imager, okay? This is some broadly distributed shit. Also, people don't have a general inclination towards child pornography. I'd like to believe that much about human society, but human beings have been replicating and consuming pornography for literally as long as we've been able to, and the majority of humans consume pornography. So in terms of like its widespread distributability, its prominence, this is an entire whole other scale. It's a lot like alcohol, something that's typically enjoyed, hopefully, by adults that almost all of them like or partake in to some extent or another, for which prohibition has failed historically. And it's funny you keep saying it's a morality issue when you're implicitly arguing in favor of the prohibition with this, gun ban or whatever.
I think society. So okay, now you talk.
We have no. Prohibition ain't gonna work. If you want people to make good decisions, you give them the tools to make those choices themselves. You want people to make the right choice because you've encouraged them socially. You've given them the tools. You don't want to just lock people's lives right in front of them and say, oh, well, all these other things would be detrimental to society, possibly somewhat in some abstract way. Oh, sure, maybe you could have a drink of alcohol, or maybe you could look at a lady's tits online and be fine, but some people wouldn't be fine. They might like it so much that they have a slightly bad relationship with it, or possibly a very bad one. So the state will shoot you if you look at titties online, or something to that effect. This is a degree of abstraction which does not warrant state intervention. If you want folks to fuck, give them reasons to go outside and fuck. Well, the problem is every time...
narrative.
Wait, hold on. Wait, first of all, you don't get the right to complain about long narratives.
Yeah, can we have 2 minutes or something?
Why can't we just talk like friends?
Because you keep interrupting me. That's why.
Well, you keep going back to the narrativization, and you jumped in on me and you
No,
brought up the gun bans, and I think that's incomparable. So I had to
Well,
cut that down. You don't actually care about the effects pornography has in society. You're religious.
I do.
Your
No, I
opposition.
do.
No, your opposition is principle. If
No,
I could find a bunch
it
of
is
studies,
principled,
stop.
but it's also based on society and effects on society.
It's
Let's break it
principle.
into 60 seconds.
It's
Go ahead,
principle first. If there were studies indicating, for example, that the presence of gay people doesn't detriment like society in any way, you would still be homophobic. And I've seen your site. I know you are. You're not evidence-driven, which is why you abuse evidence when you attempt to use it. Porn is not harmful for the vast majority of people. Wait, what citations have you made here? Porn is not harmful for the vast majority of people who consume it. Plenty of people have harmful relationships with stuff that you see all around the world, like video games or food. We have studies on the effects these things have on the brain. Your argument earlier was essentially one that indicated we should just ban the entire internet. The way we form these relationships online, like parasocial relationships with streamers, these do contribute to loneliness. Do you want to ban streaming? Should we just ban the entire internet? Should we go back to eating nothing more than grain and vegetables? If you want to make the argument that the fruits of modernity can lead people towards unhealthy relationships with media and with products, I agree. But I don't think humans are children. I think that we're capable of making decisions for ourselves, and the data backs me, because prohibition don't work. It has never led to positive outcomes.
So if we determine that porn is harmful, and I've made a clear argument on why it is without appealing to anything other than the value of marriage, the value of love and companionship and family.
Those very empirical metrics.
Yeah, plenty of empirical studies to justify that. Then that would be something that should be also curbed, whatever way that would be, whatever kind of laws could curb that. That's a separate discussion.
Vaush for 60?
Yeah, no, it's simply not the case. People like to fearmonger over pornography in particular, but all of these arguments apply to all of these products of modernity to varying extents. That's why he won't answer, like, directly, should we ban the internet or whatever. All these arguments, he wants to talk about the effects of ejaculation. People have been jerking off without porn, you know? You want to talk about the effects of people, like, forming emotional pair bonds with people they're not in direct relationship with? Say hello to dancers, models, TV actors and actresses, and people you see out there on the street. You want to talk about infidelity? We have plenty of evidence to indicate that infidelity goes back way the fuck before internet porn does. People fearmonger because, again, people are, like, lonely and desperate, and they're looking for any opportunity they can get to, like, find the problems with their life. And people who want simple solutions to those problems will always defer to the authoritarian answer. They'll say, what if the government just banned it? But when you grow up and look at the actual effects of prohibition worldwide, you see pornography and rape is incredibly common in the Muslim world. You see that the United States war on drugs hasn't led to a decrease in drug usage and has made the problem worse and has been very expensive. The criminalization of alcohol, like increased alcohol consumption. When you realize, like, these problems are complicated, you understand that humans are complicated, and you can't just pull them along the right social path by the nose. You have to give them the incentives to do well. This is ridiculous. And it's I don't know. It's just the authoritarian mindset. It's just, you know, well, a thing bad, I think thing bad, therefore get rid of it. Should we get rid of gaming, live streaming? Tell me, should my job be illegal?
Clearly, banning does work. Governments put laws in place all the time to legally restrict people from things that they want to do or they desire to do. That's a part of a legal system. You're basically denying the possibility of laws.
I love you, James. You know, interestingly, the thing that led to the biggest decrease of child pornography production and child abuse wasn't making child porn illegal. I don't even know when that would have happened, like a long time ago, I guess. In fact, child abuse, like child sexual abuse, was much higher back during the 1970s and 80s. The thing that made it decrease wasn't actually making it illegal. It was already illegal. The thing that made it decrease was the Me Too movement precursors. Obviously, the Me Too movement was like 2016, but the idea of, like, taking people seriously when they talk about, like, the experiences of abuse they've had, or like listening to kids if they say, or like giving sex education to younger people because it would help them identify if they're being abused. Behavior like that was the actual most effective metric in bringing down the abuse of children, which I suppose you find funny because I hear you laughing. But your amusement at the concept of children being abused aside, the actual thing that brought it down, it wasn't just the law. Because at the end of the day, the law is a very ineffective, clumsy tool. The best thing you do is to create social pressures and cultural incentives that lead people towards good behaviors. Law can be supplementary. I don't think the existence of pornography warrants it in any case. I don't think it's even remotely comparable in harm. Again, might as well ban all video games because video game addictions have existed for as long as they have. It's not like loot boxes were the beginning of video game addictions. Live streamers form parasocial relationships, but hell, so did TV stars, you know? Depending on where you want to draw the line, your arguments are an excuse to ban everything.
Like, this is a straw man. Yeah, I agree. Have all kinds of social programs. Child porn you're absolutely right. It's not just decreasing because of the law. It's also the huge social stigma that's associated, rightfully so, with that kind of practice. Why can't pornography have the same social stigma in addition to banning it, in addition to preventing people from accessing it, so that they actually go out and form these kinds of relationships, have happy marriages and families, and flourish like human beings are meant to do so, instead of being sitting in front of a screen masturbating all day.
So so should we ban the video games? Sitting in front of a screen, playing video games all day. Video game
addictive games, yes.
No, no, you keep doing it. All games have the ability to incite that psychological response. No. You can't walk by this, okay? All forms of media can, but video games, because they're interactive, have a higher potential to elicit this response. You keep acting like any time any person sees any pornography, that pornography is designed to be maximally addictive, and we're talking like some chick with fat titties posting them on Twitter or something. You keep exacerbating the effect of pornography relative to other things that can cause addiction responses. You're lying. Pornography has a prominent effect, but so do interactive mediums like video games. Plenty of people have video game addictions. A lot of people watching have video game addictions. I might be willing to argue more people watching this right now through my audience have video game addictions than pornography addictions. But when I ask you, should we ban video games? Your answer is, oh, only the addictive ones. But you haven't delineated the difference between addictive and non-addictive porn, so you're lying right now. You want to ban all games.
We don't talk about like recreational use of crack cocaine. Pornography is the same thing. Taking one hit is enough to get you hooked, especially since most children are exposed. But the initial hit, okay, is the same kind of hit as a kind of hardcore drug.
So this reminds me, I do want to jump into this because this is the last one on our poll. So earlier I mentioned what are subtopics that people want to see you guys address. We'll give you 60 seconds each for this topic as well.
Oh, can I respond to that and then get to what you're saying?
No, you...
Daniel says no.
I didn't get a chance to respond to your final word either.
How about
just remember
here? Can I just say one sentence?
One sentence, sure.
He sounds like a fucking dare officer. Everything he said there could apply to video games. Just one hit when you're 10? Oh yeah, Super Mario Bros. A lot of those people ended up getting game addictions. It's the same thing. He's just playing it up.